Hi and welcome to another edition of Ask SCW here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video here for SCW, the wrestling channel. Please subscribe right now, leave any comments in the comments section. Please like and share the video as well. Answering all your questions in a Q&A format here in the wrestling community. Apologies for the delay this week. It's been a bit under the weather, unfortunately, so it stopped me making the video as early as I would have liked. So just to bring you guys up to speed, the recording of this has been after Monday Night Raw this week, but I have recorded before NXT and AEW, so by the time you watch this, those shows probably have already been on, and yeah, hopefully none of the answers will be slightly behind time. But I don't believe I have too many focusing on NXT and AEW this week. So without further ado, if you want to get involved and ask a question, you could be a first-time viewer, or you might think, well, this is the week I want to ask a question. Just leave a hashtag AskSCW with your question, either in the comments here on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. This should be coming up on your screen now. So without further ado, here's the first question this week for Ask SCW. Comes from Daniel Decius and says, do you think Seth Rollins turning heel is best for business? Well, it's a very slow heel turn, isn't it? It's not quite fully in the heel turn at this precise moment. It feels like that Seth is, he's almost gone more heel last week, but this week seems to be sort of somewhere in the middle. He's teasing us whether he's actually fully gone heel or whether he has remained face. It's almost going to be one of those annoying faces again. It seems these days heel turns don't go full heel turns all the time. We get this sort of in-between stuff where I'm sort of a heel, but I still say the right things. But the thing with this heel turn that I like so far is that this isn't really a heel turn as of yet. It's not really remaining face. It's become Seth Rollins on Twitter, where he's just saying things that literally is going to annoy the hell out of you. And if he's going to play that role, and it's going to be very similar, and a lot of things I've seen as well with backstage as well with Seth Rollins this week. He mentioned with the being top of the card kind of person that always gets booed, and he obviously goes on past superstars like Roman Reigns and John Cena. But interestingly enough, brought up Bret Hart from 1997. And I feel that that's what Seth is going for here. And eventually we will get the full-blown heel turn. And it looks like he could have AOP on his side. So far, Seth needed something. That's to answer the question here if it's best for business. Seth needed something. He had gone on a great run in 2018. Things stalled a little bit in 2019, especially when he won the Universal Championship at WrestleMania. The reign just unfortunately just hasn't worked for him. He's not had a good championship reign, and I think fans turned on him a little bit because he said some annoying things on Twitter. You look at the feud with Bray Wyatt, which of course was never going to be good for Seth. That was always a bad creative decision. I understand you want to put the belt on Bray, but Seth Rollins, yeah, he was the top guy. But at the same time, people were so behind Bray that anything that would have put Seth over in that rivalry just wasn't going to wash with fans. So there's quite a few things here. I mean, the Seth and Becky run together as well was not popular at the time. So a lot of things have culminated to where people have just cried for the Seth Rollins of old. We want to see 2014, 2015 Seth Rollins. Well, Seth has said, well, maybe perhaps I'll go heel again, but I'm going to involve the character. And that's what I like here. We've got some real character development going on. So this is why I do think it's best for business, because it's not just a heel turn. There's actually something going, some substance with it. It's not just, well, I was good and now I'm bad. There's some reasoning behind it. There's some reasoning for it. And I do think if fans allow it to play out on TV, and I think that's always a big thing in wrestling with the fans these days, is if we allow this to play out, which I think we should do. I think we're in for some gold TV here. We could get a new stable with the AOP. I'd be all in favour of that as well. I think that the AOP look dominant. So I would be really in favour of seeing that take place. So for me, personally, yes, it's best for business, and I want to see how it's going to play out. But I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section here on YouTube. Next question comes from Samuel Decius. Which superstar would you like to see challenge Brock Lesnar for the title? Great question. I think the popular decision right now is Keith Lee. I believe everyone wants to see that one after Survivor Series. He's a big guy. He's dominant. He's creditable as well. So I think that he would be seen as someone that could beat the Beast, and it would seem like a likely superstar that could do it. I mean, we've just talked about Seth Rollins in the previous question, and not to be horrible, but you don't see him as someone who creditably could beat Brock Lesnar really in a fight. It's only in WWE that you kind of sit and think, I believe that. I don't believe if that was in an octagon or something like that, I don't think many people would be giving Seth a chance. So I like to have that hint of realism to go with the booking, and Keith Lee would be a strong candidate. For people that are already on the roster as we go with perhaps a next challenger, Drew McIntyre, I think, is someone that's not faced Brock Lesnar, so I'd like to see that match play out at some point. I think Randy Orton, I'd like to see a rematch at some stage of him and Lesnar. I think that could be all right, especially now that Orton seems to have gone more as a face. It would be interesting to see how the dynamic would play out with those two. And one match that I have always wanted to see, and he's been back in WWE for nearly 2 years, and they've not booked this match, and it's the reason he come back, is Bobby Lashley. Now, I know a lot of people turn around and say, well, Bobby Lashley, he's a heel, it's been horrible booking for him, not in favour of seeing it. But personally for me, I'm going to look at this and say, well, I actually want to see that match. If Lashley, could be booked as a face, be booked strongly, can be booked as so he's creditable again, drop this Rusev and Lana stuff, that nonsense can go out the window. And literally, yeah, that match, I would want to see it. I think that there's still a chance that could be made believable, but Lashley would have to be the face because as a heel run, Lashley, the whole time, for the last year and a half, however long he's been heel for, it's been awful. So for me, he has to go face if that ever was to happen. Next question comes from Christina Aguilera's manager. Will Rhea Ripley be the one to dethrone Becky Lynch? Interesting question because, of course, momentum, and we've talked about Survivor Series for the last couple of weeks on this, has given these NXT superstars really, the freedom and the believability that people think that these people should be brought to the main roster, should be, the future is now almost, that they should be the ones to dethrone the champions, and they aren't the challengers that would seem creditable. Because if you look at it and say, well, Becky Lynch, we've seen her against Charlotte a million times. Asuka, yeah, I think people want to see that match to see Becky get her win back. But, I mean, there's a lot of matches that you look on Raw and think, who is there for Becky to actually face? So Rhea Ripley would be a dream match, I think, for a lot of people at this stage of the game because she is being groomed to be Becky Lynch. But I do think she's been groomed to be Becky Lynch in about 2 or 3 years' time. I don't think she'll be the one to actually dethrone Becky Lynch if we look at the Raw Women's Championship right now. We spoke about who should win the Royal Rumble last week, and I did say that Shayna Baszler or Ronda Rousey would be those candidates to do it. I do think it's going to be one of them. If Ronda Rousey comes back, which I'm not sure she will at this stage, a lot of people have suggested she's not coming back at any time. But of course, a good swerve would be the Royal Rumble to do it, to make that match at WrestleMania. It would seem like it's the go-to to make match for WWE, for making money, for publicity. Ronda Rousey being back, advertising would go through the roof for her to come back for that match. But if not Shayna Baszler, that's been groomed as well at Survivor Series. Baszler got the win. She beat Bayley. Why not go for Becky Lynch on Raw? For me, that would make a hell of a lot of sense. So those are the two that I think would be most likely to dethrone Becky Lynch. And here is also my reason why coming into the next question. Next question comes from Noob and Co. And Noob asks, do you think Lacey Evans will be the next SmackDown Women's Champion now that she's had a face turn? Do you think Becky Lynch is not happy being in the Women's Tag Team Champion with Charlotte Flair? And will Rhea Ripley be the one to take the NXT Women's title off Shayna Baszler? So we talked about Rhea Ripley, so let's do that first. Yes, I think she is going to be the one to finally dethrone Shayna Baszler. Baszler has beat everyone, and I think that at this point of the game, we needed someone creditable to actually beat Baszler at this stage so that Baszler could perhaps come to the main roster and then take on Becky Lynch. So I think Baszler's time in NXT should come toward a finish now. She's done so well, but she's been the champion for so long, and it almost feels that Baszler, for me, is at a different level to the rest of that women's division through booking. Not necessarily through in-ring work, but through booking. I don't see anyone that can stand up to her apart from Rhea Ripley. If Rhea Ripley loses to Shayna Baszler now, I really don't know where we go with Baszler from here. She has to vacate the belt and come up. That's the only way that it would make sense from that point going forward, unless a new signee is brought in, because Baszler has cleaned through the entire roster. Rhea Ripley has done amazing. I do think one day she'll be going for Becky Lynch, but that's not today, it's not tomorrow, it's probably not for at least another year or two. I think the NXT Women's Championship is her destination, and I think she will be the one to beat Baszler. We spoke about Becky Lynch. No, I don't think she's happy to be a tag team champion with Charlotte Flair. Not to make the Women's Tag Team Championships any more devalued than perhaps you could argue they probably have been in their first year, really. It's only the Kabuki Warriors that have probably given it major credibility. And I understand that that's probably quite a controversial comment to some people, but I do think that they have been the best champions with the belts. I think Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross were okay as well. And I would actually like to see that story finished, because I do think that they were on their way to making those belts mean a hell of a lot and to make a story out of it. Of course, though, it would have been a breakup angle, but I do think that at the moment I like Alexa and Nikki continuing as they are as that team. I don't think that needs to break up anytime soon. I think there's a lot of mileage there. But to answer your question, Becky and Charlotte are meant to be rivals, and for me it doesn't really make sense for them to be together at this stage unless we're going to get the four horsewomen together, which they're on different shows. And yeah, I just, the timing isn't right for it right now. So maybe in 6 months it could be, but right now it doesn't feel like the right time. I think if they are a team and they go against the Kabuki Warriors at TLC, the Kabuki Warriors will retain those belts. I do think that they still have a lot of mileage as tag team champions, and I think that they're doing quite a good job with the belts. They've been probably the best champs so far, in my opinion. As for Lacey Evans, yeah, now she sort of quietly turned face on SmackDown last week. Someone needed to, because there was too many heels on SmackDown. I don't see her, though, becoming champion. I'm going to throw it out there nice and quickly. I think Lacey Evans is just a placeholder for a bigger feud at a bigger event. She is designed here for TLC, and I do see Bayley retaining the belt, which Lacey Evans at this point, after the Saudi show at Crown Jewel, the face turn, I think, seemed kind of like it was time to do, and it was a good move to do, because she kind of broke the character completely. So it would have seemed a bit weird for her to go completely into heel mode again. So the face turn felt right, but yeah, I don't see her winning the belt anytime soon, sadly. Next question comes from Chan the Legend. Who do you think Bray Wyatt will compete against at WrestleMania? Do you see him being Universal Champion that long, and why or why not? I do think that Bray Wyatt will be Universal Champion at WrestleMania. My reasoning for it is he has a brand new championship, a designed, custom-made championship. You don't make them, and you do not sell them for as much money as you are, WWE. It's a hell of a lot of money for a championship belt if you are not going to have him as champion for a long, long time. So the feud with Daniel Bryan is almost a given. Let's just hope it's a good match. But yeah, at WrestleMania, that is a place that belt could be dropped. And there are only two people for me on SmackDown that could face Bray Wyatt in a meaningful program at WrestleMania. One of them being Braun Strowman, but I believe that will be at the Royal Rumble. If you've watched previous videos, I've always said that I think that's the match I expect at the Rumble is Wyatt against Braun Strowman. Take Strowman out of the Rumble as well, so you haven't got to have that really large and nice superstar look weak and lose against all these smaller guys. And as well as that, I think Roman Reigns is the other one. Roman Reigns has been almost completely taken out of the championship picture for well over a year. WWE probably feel it's probably time needed to put him back in. We have been reminded of what Roman Reigns has gone through over the last 12 months just recently. I do feel that we are probably in for a feel-good story coming into WrestleMania. I'm not sure how feel-good it's going to be defeating Bray Wyatt. I think that's probably going to put a lot of heat back on Reigns. But at the same time, I think that is probably the one superstar that they feel that they can have defeat the Fiend and it not harm him so much. So I think that Roman Reigns is going to be the guy that will face Bray Wyatt at this stage at WrestleMania. And I do think as well that Roman Reigns probably will be the guy to defeat Bray Wyatt. But this is a very early stage and we've got a long way off. So plenty can chop and change. We've not even started the road to WrestleMania as of yet. Well, we mentioned about the Fiend's custom-made Universal Championship, and Dylan Ketchum asked, what do I think of it? Well, I must admit, the first thoughts I had of it were not as positive as they could have been. Not because of the fact that it's an ugly championship or anything like that, but it's just the fact that we just changed the Universal Championship to then bring another custom-made one in straight away. But I do think that it could add to the Fiend's entrance. To come with this sort of blue-looking toy championship to the ring, for me, doesn't do the Fiend a service. I like the fact that then we have almost again that split personality, the Firefly Funhouse with that sort of blue kind of toy-like championship with Bray, and we've got this dark evil championship. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is I'm perhaps not as much fan of the design, but I am a fan of what it represents. I think for the Fiend it is a perfect fit. And the fact he has the belt sort of around his neck and the face there, it almost kind of feels like you're still seeing his face going towards the ring. So in that way, I do kind of like it. I think that it's going to bring a lot to the table, even if you kind of look at it and think, it's not the nicest looking championship I've ever seen. Next question comes from Why Man Podcast. Is Daniel Bryan in the top 3 of most over superstars ever? Well, I'm going to kind of probably be someone to flatten the mood here, but no. Daniel Bryan has been fantastic. He is majorly over. He's great at everything he does. Is he in the top 3 of this decade? Without question. Without question. But we're talking ever. I mean, you look at the height of Hulkamania back in the old days, Daniel Bryan isn't on that level, sadly. You look at the Attitude Era, Austin, The Rock. I mean, there's a top 3 on its own. Shawn Michaels, you know, you could argue DX in its prime as well. There are a lot of superstars that have been so over. CM Punk as well in the modern day is probably as over, and probably arguably still as over as Daniel Bryan, because fans still chant his name in arenas across the country ever since he's left. So even though he's now come back, people dream of him coming back into the ring. Is Daniel Bryan a big deal? Yes. Is he in the top 10? Yes. Yes, he's... I'm now doing the yes movement all of a sudden. But is he in the top 3 ever? For me, sadly, no. Is there time for him to make his way there? Potentially. But at the same time, I just think that wrestling in previous eras has been bigger than what it is now. Has been more over with more casual fans than it is now. And although Daniel Bryan is got the ability to make you cheer him, he's got the ability to make you boo him, he is incredible. But I wouldn't say he's in the top 3 ever. Is he in the top 10? Arguably. I mean, one name we've not even mentioned, actually, Chris Jericho. For me, Chris Jericho is more over than Daniel Bryan. So I think there is a number of superstars that are perhaps on equal level, or for me, or above. I would have Daniel Bryan in the top 10, but yeah, no, not the top 3 for me. But I would like to know people's comments in the comments section where you would rank Daniel Bryan of most over in all time. Is he in your top 3? Is he in your top 5 or your top 10? Let me know right now here on Ask SCW. Next question from Calling It In The Ring and asking me, who would you make the top guy for 2020 in All Elite Wrestling? Well, for AEW, for me, it's kind of an obvious answer to this one, really, but MJF, I mean, the guy is just gold. He's money. He's 23 or 24 years old, and he's so amazing at a promo. He has got the ability to carry a company on his back already on a mic standpoint. In ring, I think perhaps he's got a little way to go. But the thing is, though, the ability to want to see this guy get beaten, punched in the face, you're already more than halfway there. You could put on a 5-star match, but if you've not got the character to go behind it, what good are you? Because people will get bored of you after a while. You've only got to watch the Broken Skulls interview with The Undertaker. You see all these guys that do these 5-star moves, 5-star matches, and there gets a point where we get used to seeing that. And how can you top when you're doing these, triple somersaults off the top rope? How do you top that? You can't. It's an ability where you get as far as you can go. And if you've not got the character to back it up, and that's the thing, the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression, you were more into the characters. The in-ring work now is far superior to what it was back then. But if you look at the character development back then of what we were seeing, yes, they probably had more leeway to do what they could do, but they had the ability to get over. And you want to see someone get beat. I mean, even if you look in the last 10 years, you want to see The Miz get a punch in the face. So if you look at MJF, he's perfectly made to be a megastar in wrestling, full stop. This guy has got it, and he will be a megastar. So if you want to say, who would I creatively make the top guy? I would say I would build him to beat Cody, because I think that's clear the direction of where they're going. Chris Jericho, perhaps in the first 3 or 4 months, will put someone majorly over, maybe like a Kenny Omega or a Hangman Page, and give them the championship. Then after maybe a 4 to 6 month reign of that superstar being made, give the dirty heel MJF that title and let him run with it. So by the end, this time next year, I want to see him as the top guy. And I think he's got all the attributes to be a top guy. And I think that, like I said, a lot of people would pay money to see that guy get beat. And if you can have that sort of that heel moment where he escapes with the championship every which way when he's put on pay-per-view, or every time he's on a weekly AEW show, because they're only going to have 4 pay-per-views a year, you have the ability to get so much heat on this guy, and literally you have then got that megastar in the making, because then when the next superstar defeats MJF, they become a megastar as well. So For me, he is money, and he's not just money for himself, he is money for the company and money for the other superstars on that roster with him. Literally, I think that by making him a champion and making him the star, you have the ability to make more stars in AEW as well. Last question this week comes from a Taya World Order, and I do love a good Impact Wrestling question. Is there any way Taya Valkarie retains at Hard to Kill versus Jordynne Grace? I'm hoping for the best, but after the longest reign in Knockouts history, Taya is running out of opponents she hasn't beaten, and a belt change seems inevitable. Do you know what? I agree with you, but what I'm going to say here is that as much as I understand you hoping for Taya to retain the championship, sometimes a belt drop doesn't necessarily mean that they are not seen as a top person in the company more. Doesn't mean that they are not got the it factor. It just means that it's time to just share the love and keep that character relevant. And I think that this is a time where it would be good for Taya to drop the belt because, like you said, Jordynne Grace, I mean, she's beaten Jordynne Grace once, and I believe that was at Homecoming early this year. Probably by the time we get to Hard to Kill, will probably be a year earlier. And looking at that, that makes me feel that she's gone for everybody, and I don't really see anyone on her level. We talked earlier in the video about Shayna Baszler. Who is on Taya Valkyrie's level right now in Impact Wrestling? Everyone seems beneath her. And that will only do damage to Taya Valkyrie in the real long run. She needs new competitors. New stars haven't been built alongside her. So that makes you kind of feel, well, yes and no, it's not really going to help her long term because she's going to be seen as, well, she should squash that person. All of a sudden, from what this amazing Knockouts division we've got, all of a sudden it looks like a weak division because no one is creditable enough to challenge for that belt. So for me, the best thing actually is now to get the belt off Taya. She's been champion and probably will be champion for nearly a year by the time it comes to that point. So she's become the longest reigning champion in Knockouts history. Now is the time for her to drop that belt. And unless, Gail Kim comes back for one more match, who is there after Jordynne Grace? Tessa Blanchard is going for the World Championship. So arguably you can say, well, the rematch there, it's been around a year since they faced each other. That could work. And yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. But apart from Jordynne Grace and Tessa, who is there? There isn't anyone. It's a point now for me where Taya probably would be good for her to drop the belt. As well, so the character doesn't remain stale. So that way, the character doesn't need to change long term either. She can still remain like she is. She can have a couple of undercard feuds. And maybe in 6 months, then it doesn't seem so bad if she's back in the championship picture and then gets the belt once again. It's all about that rotation, and that is what Impact Wrestling probably needs to look to feel to do. They need to continue to build new stars when you have a champion. Taya is the champion. She's been a champion for a long time. I don't think that they've really built a creditable number one challenger for that belt over a number of months. Jordynne Grace is probably the best they've done in doing that. And if she was to get the belt now, she would actually get a major rub. So in another way, she would become an overnight sensation. And she would then knock Taya off her perch. You can have the rematch. Taya then takes the back seat. Someone else is built up, goes for Jordynne Grace, doesn't kind of work out. You can then slowly build Taya back up. And then eventually, whether it's against Jordan or whether it's against someone else, then it becomes that mega money match again. And you can make Taya the major star again of that division without it seeming so we've seen this before. So that's kind of how I kind of feel with it. I understand, though, from a fan's perspective, when it's one of your favourites, you always want them to win. But I do kind of feel, like you say, there is an inevitability here. And I think it is, we said at the start of the video, best of business. I do think it's probably the best thing at this stage. I think Taya probably does need to drop the belt, just unless there is some new people coming in. Who is there really outside of this that she could challenge? I don't know really at this point of the game unless they bring someone new in. Perhaps Kelly Klein is on the market. She would be a great person to bring in if she is actually I believe she's cut her ties with Ring of Honor now. But I can see Kelly Klein going to AEW personally. So I believe her partner is working there as a producer. So it would be hard to see Kelly Klein coming in at this stage. But yeah, I do think that it would be best of business. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see when it comes to Hard to Kill. But I always enjoy an Impact Wrestling question. And yeah, Taya World Order, you always throw them in there for us. So I do appreciate it massively. But yeah, that's all from this particular video anyway, and thank you to everyone. Don't just thank you to Taya, thank you to everyone that's put the questions in, and make sure to follow everyone on Twitter as well. You guys are always very supportive here on SCW, and I do appreciate it. If you want to get involved for the next episode, then you know what to do. Just a hashtag AskSCW. Do it in the comments on this video, or of course you can always do it on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. Go back to the start of the video and you can see where you can follow me. And yeah, I'll see you next time here on YouTube. Thank you for watching, and yeah, have yourselves a good one. Take care. I'll see you soon.